We're back to sentence some more Disney villains. Today, we're not just wrapping up the Silver Age, but we'll also be diving into the films of the Bronze Age. We've got a lot of villains in store, so without further introduction, please be seated and let us get these trials started. Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is sentencing Disney villains for their crimes, the Silver and Bronze Age. Our first stop of the day is to Wonderland, as we examine the villain of the Disney classic Alice in Wonderland. The first villain is the tyrannical ruler of Wonderland, the Queen of Hearts. Though she is the Queen of Hearts, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say that she has anything but. She has one method of punishing those who disobey, and only one: beheadings. Right from the get-go, this makes her the first murderer of today's criminals, and certainly one of the most dangerous. She also tries to execute Alice, making her guilty of attempted murder as well. Since this is her only idea of bringing about justice, we can also safely say that she's a ruler who abuses her power, rather than using it responsibly. While she's only guilty of 3 criminal charges, none of them are to be taken lightly. And because of that, the Queen of Hearts earns herself the death penalty. The Queen is an abusive and oppressive ruler who has no regard for her people. So it only seems fair she gets the same punishment that she gave out to so many. To make a long story short, it's off with her head. We're leaving Wonderland for England as we head for the next film, Lady and the Tramp. Up next is a 2-for-1 special, the Siamese cats known as Cy and Am. Compared to the other villains we'll be covering today, Cy and Am aren't exactly the most dangerous, but that doesn't make them completely harmless. Though their time in the film is short, they still find ways of making situations worse for our heroes. They are guilty of 2 instances of attempted murder when they try to eat both the family bird and fish. Aside from that, this duo also commits property damage when they destroy much of their home's furniture in an attempt to damage Lady's reputation in the house. It's only fair that they get 2 years of prison time. As we said, they're among the tamer villains we'll look at today, and that manages to spare them from a stricter punishment. Believe us when we say there are far worse Disney villains than them. It's time to leave the Silver Age for the Bronze Age. The first movie, The Aristocats, and our first villain is Edgar Balthazar. Most will see him as a typical cartoon English butler. In reality, however, Edgar is a sneaky and opportunistic foe. Angered by Madame's decision to leave her fortune with her kittens, he hatches a plot to get rid of the animals so that he can become the only possible inheritor of her finances.
They'll be gone. I'll think of a way.
The mission he embarks on makes him guilty of animal cruelty, kidnapping, and embezzlement. And, like a lot of Disney villains who went up against cats and dogs, he's a great example of how not to drive. With 4 crimes under his belt, we have to give Mr. Balthazar 40 years in prison. He'll definitely not enjoy such a punishment, but at the very least, he'll be happy it isn't Timbuktu. Next is a trip to the times of kings and knights, as we discuss the fiends of Disney's Robin Hood. First, we have Prince John. Prince John is, in essence, the textbook example of a corrupt and self-absorbed ruler. John cares not for his people, and instead hoards both his riches and his attention toward himself. But when the going gets tough, Prince John is quick to show his true colors as a helpless and cowardly lion. Being a corrupt prince, many of John's offenses go without saying. He abuses his power by using it only to make himself richer.
Double the taxes. Triple the taxes.
John is also guilty of usurpation and treason, as the only reason he's on the throne is that he tricked his brother to go out on a crusade. And, rather obviously, Prince John's many attempts to stamp out Robin Hood and his comrade mean he's attempted murder on several occasions. So we give John a life sentence in prison. Considering his offenses, he could have easily gotten the death penalty, but since he's only so dangerous of a criminal, that didn't feel necessary in this case. That being said, he still remains a scheming individual, so it would be best if he was removed from society. Prince John might no longer be the ruler of his kingdom, but he can at least be happy that he's now gotten a whole cell all to himself. Prince John might be the villain of Robin Hood, but no ruler is anything without minions who follow them, especially one as cowardly as him. And while many serve him, none are as loyal as the Sheriff of Nottingham. The Sheriff is very much Prince John's personified fist. While John spends his time counting money in his castle, the Sheriff is the one who carries out many of the prince's tasks. Just from that little bit of background, we can go ahead and consider him guilty of aiding and abetting. He steals money on behalf of Prince John too, making theft another offense.
The family that saves together pays together.
He falsely imprisoned several Robin Hood's allies, being the only villain in this video to do so. While the Sheriff of Nottingham doesn't commit as many crimes as his prince does, he's still heavily involved in many of his schemes, more than any villain in fact. Because of this, we give the sheriff the same sentence we gave John: life behind bars. Since he was John's right-hand man, it feels appropriate that he gets the same kind of punishment that his boss got. Look on the brighter side, now Prince John has a bunk buddy. Next is Sir Hiss. Sir Hiss is another one of Prince John's henchmen, but he's not nearly as well regarded as the Sheriff of Nottingham. Sir Hiss tries his best to advise his prince on situations, but John rarely listens. While he doesn't listen to Sir Hiss most definitely listens to the prince. That already makes him guilty of aiding, much like the sheriff. His other major offense is brainwashing, an ability he uses to ensure that King Richard would be gone, so John could take the throne. Sir Hiss isn't as evil as either the sheriff or Prince John, but he's still a cunning opponent, who should be treated as such. We have to give this snake 30 years in prison. Sir Hiss avoids a longer duration in jail due to having fewer offenses, but considering how he manipulated the literal king, we hardly think he should get off easy. Now we just have to create a cell that he can't wriggle out of. Alright, the last villain from Robin Hood is Captain Crocodile. He isn't a direct henchman of Prince John, but considering his actions during the film's archery tournament, he might as well be. During this scene, he not only aids John in his effort to apprehend Robin Hood, but he also tries to kill him. Captain Crocodile has the least amount of screen time of any villain in the film, but don't let that fool you into thinking he's less dangerous. Due to his role in Prince John's evil plan, we sentence this captain to 20 years in jail. Crocodile gets off easier than some of his companions, but it will still be a while before this crocodile roams free. Alright, our next movie is The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Coming to the stand is the duo that is Heffalumps and Woozles. They're featured only briefly, having less screen time than any other villain on this list. But they are the closest thing this film has to an antagonist, so why don't we put them on trial, huh? Appearing in a dream sequence that Winnie the Pooh endures, these polka-dotted pets scare the daylights out of him and try their hardest to apprehend his precious honey. That's the only real crime: theft. And even then, it's important to remember that this is a dream sequence. So we sentence them to a round of community service. Since they don't do anything of actual malice in the film's reality, it would feel a bit weird to sentence characters for something that happened only in a dream. Beyond that, we think Winnie would want to see them atone for any trouble they've caused and work to become better people. That certainly fits the film's world. The last film of the day is The Rescuers. The first villain is Madame Medusa. Medusa is infatuated with recovering the sacred diamond known as the Devil's Eye, and she'll do anything she can to get it. She brings an innocent child, Penny, into her mission, which already makes her a kidnapper. Madame Medusa is also abusive to just about everyone in the film. Her interactions with Penny are an example of child abuse, and she's not any nicer around animals either. When Bianca and Bernard arrive to save Penny, she quickly tries to dispatch them with anything she can get her hands on, showing that she's not above attempting murder. And of course, her attempt to steal the Devil's Eye adds a theft charge to her list of crimes.
My diamond!
Madame Medusa is undoubtedly one of the nastiest and most unpleasant villains in Disney history, so we gotta give her a life sentence. Madame Medusa should not be around any other person or animal, so it would be best both for her and the community if she spent the rest of her days in solitude. Next, we have Mr. Snoops. Snoops is nowhere near as evil or as threatening as Medusa, but that isn't to say that he's not afraid of getting his hands dirty. He aids Madame Medusa in her crimes, and he's also just as guilty of kidnapping and abusing Penny as she is. With that in mind, he gets 30 years in the slammer. Snoops' overall timidness and status as a minion spare him from the sentence Medusa got, and if he was to confess more about her crimes, that could very well get him an even more lenient sentence. We're not necessarily counting on that, but if there's one thing that's true about Mr. Snoops is that he'll do anything to save his skin. Finally, we have Brutus and Nero. Like Snoops, these two are guilty of both aiding and kidnapping Penny, but unlike him, they are legitimate threats that one should tread lightly around. The most notable crime they commit is assault, which they do frequently throughout the film. From the rescuers to Penny to even Medusa, they see everything as food. And that's the attitude that gets them 40 years in prison. Committing the same set of crimes that Snoop did already gets them the same time he got, but when you throw in the additional assault charge, they quickly get a worse shake than Snoops. And unlike Snoops, they will rat people out. As a result, it makes the most amount of sense that these crocodiles should get a worse deal than he did. But don't worry, it's not all bad news for them. They'll at least look a lot more youthful when they do get out of prison than either of their bosses will.